Hey guys, my name is Margaret Adele and I am here with my first ever book review. Now I know book reviews don't do well, so I'm going to keep this as short as possible. I recently won in a book raffle from Bookish First, The Bird King by Willow Wilson. Now the whole point of Bookish First is that the books you win in these raffles you will then review after reading them. And I've already posted a review in a couple different places, I believe on Goodreads and the Bookish First site, but I'm doing another one for you guys. So this one intrigued me right from the get-go, right from the premise. This revolves around the character of Fatima, who is a concubine in a sultan's harem during the height of the Spanish Inquisition. The story begins while the palace is under siege and everything's kind of going to crap. An envoy is sent from the newly made country of Spain from King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. Now, it seems to be going already poorly, but then Fa, as she is known, makes a kind of egregious error. Her friend Hassan, who is the map maker to the Sultan, has a strange ability. Through the maps he draws, he can actually change the world around him, making hallways where there were none, or opening doors to entirely different rooms, all with the sketching of his map hand, if you want to call it that, his left hand, actually. Now, the envoy comes with a woman named Luz, who is not quite a nun. She's actually, I believe, called a lay sister. And she earns the trust of Fa, who shows her Hassan's gift. And this is all in the synopsis, by the way. I'm not spoiling this. Who basically decides that Hassan is a sorcerer and possessed by the devil and needs to be taken in to be tortured with the Inquisition. Fa decides that that's not cool. And she and Hassan promptly run away. This book was definitely different than a lot of historical fantasy in that it's over a period of time which a lot of people don't usually look into, with characters that people don't usually look into. The minute I heard that it was Muslims during the height of the Spanish Inquisition, I was really intrigued. For those of you who don't know, Muslims were one of the people groups that the Spanish Inquisition targeted, essentially forcibly converting them and or killing them, depending. So this was definitely something you don't hear a lot about in mainstream literature. So I'm going to go into what I loved about it, what I didn't like about it, final thoughts, and the star rating. So let me get out my list. Overall, I did like this book. There was more to like than I disliked, so I will start off right there. So number one, the first thing that I really liked was the premise, as I just went over, Muslims during the height of the Spanish Inquisition. Two, it was very philosophical fantasy, meaning that this is not magical realism at all. There's a lot of moments where a character will explain something and you kind of just have to take the explanation as the vague, cryptic sentence they give you. You're not going to get an inner workings. Even Hassan does not know the details of his own abilities. It kind of just happens and he just goes with it. Now, I like that. I don't necessarily need all of my magic to be explained. I don't necessarily need to know where his gifts come from or what they are. And the philosophies of it, a lot about love and evil and all of that kind of stuff are there too, and I loved those. I'm definitely here for a deep thinking book. Number three, it's my favorite part, LGBT representation. The character of Hassan is gay. Very gay. He talks about the men he finds attractive and how he does not find Fa attractive, even though she is like supposed to be the most beautiful woman at court. And I really liked that. It's not something that's made very stereotypical. He's not super effeminate or whatever. He's kind of innocent-ish. And for someone who is a gay character at a time when it was really not okay to be a gay character, he's very open about it. Although that might be the result of everyone in the palace essentially just like ignoring it because he's got this cool ability that helps us. So we're just going to let him invite men to his chamber and ignore it. Number four, as a result of Hassan's sexuality, he and Fa have a totally platonic relationship. They actually tease the idea of why don't we get married anyway, but it's never gone through with because they know that it wouldn't really be there. So their relationship as a result is completely non-romantic, and I really liked that. I have gotten so tired of we have a male protagonist and a female protagonist, thereby they must fall in love. And I really like looking into a kind of love that's different. What do you do when it's love devoid of sex between two non-family members? And it looks into that a lot. Their relationship is a big plot point. It's a big conflict at times. And they have arguments as things devolve or change over the course of this story. I very much enjoyed that. You could definitely feel the love between those two characters, even though they didn't actually have any romantic interest towards each other. 5. The villain. Luz, who is essentially like a big person in the Inquisition. You never get her exact title, but she's definitely like a leader in some sense of the word, is my favorite kind of villain, because she's the kind of villain that thinks she's in the right. She is wholeheartedly under the belief that Hassan's gifts come from the devil, that both he and Fa need to be converted to Christianity, and she's hardcore into that, up to and including torture. And her conversations with Fa are so interesting because she like doesn't waver. When she speaks to Fa, she's so absolutely sure that she's in the right, even after doing horrible things. And I love that kind of villain because I feel like that's way more true to life, and that's way more true to this time period. Like the people that in the Spanish Inquisition that did all those horrible things, in their minds, they were in the right. They were in the right to torture anyone that was different to them because that's what their religion told them to. So it definitely reflected the premise. So the premise was definitely made good in that you got a lot of members of the Holy Order that are definitely all against anyone that doesn't believe what they do, which was true to history. So I loved that. And the last one, number 6, our protagonist Fa. Not always likable, but always interesting. She was very complex. I loved her ruminations on her place in the Sultan's court, how she talked about how she wasn't really supposed to be a person. She was supposed to be a thing. And she flat out told the woman that technically owned her that, like, I can't love you. I'm a thing you own. Property doesn't love. And she talked about how, you know, she wasn't happy with what she had, but she didn't really know what else there was. And how she didn't, like, hate the Sultan, but being forced to sleep with him was also not cool. And it was definitely this intriguing mix of, she both understood how good she had it in comparison, but she still hated everything. And I really liked how complex that was as a character. Now, and again, not always likable, but always interesting. She was definitely someone that I would definitely read more about. Now, that's my positive points. Going a little bit negative here. Not too many, actually. So the one problem I had was with the synopsis. Now, I mentioned that I already told you about the character of Luz, and that whole point of Fa trusting someone and then having them betray her is all in the synopsis. I believe, let me read exactly. Hassan has a secret. He can draw maps of places he's never seen and bend the ship of reality. When representatives of the newly formed Spanish monarchy arrive to negotiate the Sultan's surrender, Fatima befriends one of the women, not realizing that she will see Hassan's gift as sorcery. So basically from the get-go, you're told someone will come, Fa will trust her, she's not to be trusted, she will chase them. Which I understand from a certain extent, including that because it is the jump-off point, but on the other hand, the betrayal would have been so much cooler if you would have been told about it ahead of time. Because that synopsis basically takes up the first 100 pages. You're 100 pages in before you're past that point. It's the meat of the story that the synopsis doesn't cover. And getting a fourth of the way through a book before you're actually in the part that's up in the air was a little bit iffy for me. But I know that G. Willow Wilson, as the author, doesn't actually have any control over that, so I can't hold that too much against her. I just wish the synopsis had been altered a little bit. Number 2, there is a sudden out of nowhere redemption for a villainous character. I'm not going to tell you who, obviously, I don't want to spoil it, but there's one of the villains kind of out of nowhere is a good guy, and that's kind of whatever. I love redemption arcs, but I need the arc. I need to know that, you know, here's their heart slowly changing as they realize the error of their ways. I need all 3 ghosts with Scrooge, essentially. And you don't really have that. So that kind of felt like a hollow redemption for me. But that's kind of a more minor thing. The bigger thing is the last 100 or so pages of the story kind of feels like a different story in that it ups the fantastical aspects a lot more. Beforehand, of course, there was always fantastical aspects. It is fantasy, but it had always been grounded in that this is religious persecution reality. It was always with the backdrop of the Inquisition, of this group of people that decide that anyone that doesn't believe what they do is going to be tortured and killed or converted. The last part kind of goes straight fantasy, straight, everything's kind of up in the air and you just have to accept it. And that's not, I mean, not against that. It was just such a severe tone shift that it literally does feel like it belongs in another book. Like this little part of another book was added to this. The ending was fairly satisfying. It definitely felt like an ending. There was also a moment that kind of like hurt my heart in a, well, I mean, not in a good way, but like in a profound way, I guess you could say, that I definitely, again, not enjoyed, but like I enjoyed that she could write something so deeply to evoke those emotions. So I did like it. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. I would definitely suggest it for anyone that is a lover of historic fantasy, who loves own voices. The author, Willow Wilson, is Muslim, and you can see the effects of that religious practice in the book. A lot of things I had to like look up to make sure that I knew exactly what that was supposed to be. I don't know that much about Jinn, and there are Jinn characters that I had to look up. Although I did love Vikram. Vikram is a great character. It is also, again, LGBT representation. Love that. Ending aside, the rest of the book really felt cohesive for me, really felt like it was the extension of the last chapter that came before. All in all, I would definitely suggest for you to read it. This book will be published as of right now, to my knowledge. It will come out March 12th of this year. I hope that won't be changed. I'd love for more people to read this. If you're interested, you can find it on basically anywhere. I think it's on Amazon pre-order. You might want to double check that. But definitely, The Bird King by Willow Wilson. Definitely a fan. So thank you for sitting here through the first book review on my channel. There will be more to come. I have another book currently that I need to read for Bookish First, and I'll get that review up. But I don't know. I'm really happy with this. Thank you so much for coming along. I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.